President Zelenskyy is once again heading to Washington, this time with high stakes. His meeting in the US Capitol is expected to focus heavily on securing deeper military support, especially long-range strike systems. At the same time, President Trump is reportedly preparing to meet with President Putin in Hungary, following a call that Trump called very productive. Sources familiar with the situation say the United States has begun providing Kyiv with intelligence on targets deep inside Russian-held territory, a move that signals a shift in US policy and could reshape the trajectory of the war. Trump, in the wake of his call with Putin, announced plans for a Biden-era-style return to summit diplomacy. He stated on Truth Social, "At the conclusion of the call, we agreed that there will be a meeting of our high-level advisors next week. President Putin and I will then meet in an agreed-upon location, Budapest, Hungary, to see if we can bring this inglorious war between Russia and Ukraine to an end." He also said that the US side of the upcoming negotiations would initially be led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, with other names still to be determined. While the Hungarian capital is now on the docket, Trump did not specify when exactly the meeting would take place. This prospective summit comes scarcely 2 months after Trump's summit with Putin in Alaska, a meeting that, by many accounts, yielded little momentum. Voices from within and outside the administration have expressed mounting frustration at the stalled progress. In his remarks, Trump described his conversation with Putin as fruitful, noting that they discussed the future of US-Russia trade, the return of abducted Ukrainian children, and peace in the Middle East. He framed these auxiliary topics as mechanisms to facilitate the main goal, ending the war. Zelenskyy is expected to press Trump for advanced systems, most prominently Tomahawk cruise missiles. According to multiple officials, Kyiv sees these long-range weapons as critical to shifting the balance in Russia's rear areas. Trump hinted at this possibility during his latest press interactions. "I might say, if this war is not going to get settled, I'm going to send them Tomahawks." The Tomahawk is an incredible weapon, a very offensive weapon. However, the president has not publicly committed to the transfer of such weaponry and did not include it in his official readout of the Putin call, leaving analysts to speculate whether it came up behind closed doors. Supporters of the move argue that providing Kyiv with long-range strike capability may create new leverage in negotiations, but critics see the risk of escalation, especially if Russia perceives it as a direct threat to its territory. In recent weeks, the US has reportedly shared intelligence with Ukraine on targeting energy infrastructure, including power plants and other critical nodes in Russian territory. This approach would constitute a marked departure from previous US policy, which avoided facilitating cross-border strikes. The hope is that such targeting could press Moscow to the negotiating table. Yet, experts warn the optics and strategic implications are fraught. The use of such intelligence could provoke harsher retaliation from Russia, especially if it views it as US direct involvement. The Tomahawk missiles themselves have a range of roughly 1,500 miles and are considered potent offensive weapons, capable of striking deep behind enemy lines. If the US were to supply them, it would risk escalating the conflict significantly, including opening doors to asymmetric responses from Russia. Analysts note that Trump has publicly and privately weighed this option, though he has not confirmed whether he is ready to take the step. Meanwhile, Russia has stated that any such move would have severe consequences for US-Russia diplomacy and push Moscow further away from peace talks. One recurring concern raised in your transcript and echoed by many analysts is that Trump's diplomacy often hinges on his most recent interlocutor. In this case, his call with Putin may carry disproportionate weight in shaping his subsequent policies toward Ukraine. That raises the question, will Zelenskyy's US visit be overshadowed or undercut by a more dominant US-Russia narrative? Adding to this complexity, recent Russian strikes in Sumy, Kyiv, and other regions have escalated pressure on the Biden never left issue, reinforcing Zelenskyy's calls for US hardware support. European states, too, are amplifying their demands for clearer signals from Washington. In conversation with the broadcast, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander General Wesley Clark cautioned that while diplomacy is always preferable, the outcome of such talks would depend heavily on what happens on the battlefield in the intervening days. He warned that if Putin believes he is winning, he may use negotiations merely to stall for time or shape future discourse to his advantage. Rather than genuinely seeking resolution, Moscow could push trade, space, or nuclear issues to distract from Ukraine's immediate defense needs. Clark also questioned whether Trump truly wants to pressure Putin, given Trump's long-standing interest in US-Russian economic ties once the conflict ends. He noted that many American firms are wary of operating in Russia's opaque environment, but the optics of future investment are sometimes dangled as incentives. When pressed about the Tomahawk option, Clark acknowledged its significance, but cautioned that mere threats may not be enough to force Putin's hand. He can threaten it, but he doesn't want to do it. And Putin knows this, he said. Clark argued that Russia may well call Trump's bluff, urging the US to supply more capable systems if it wants real influence. Clark stressed the dangers if Washington is content with a ceasefire without a broader peace deal. Russia would likely regroup, reinforce its position, and prepare for renewed offensives. In his view, a temporary pause in hostilities would not satisfy Ukrainian or European expectations and could play into Moscow's longer-term strategy. The coming days are likely to be decisive. Will Trump agree to provide Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles, or at least commit to such a pathway? Can the intelligence sharing and new targeting options change Russia's calculations? Will the Budapest summit materialize, and under what conditions? Can Zelenskyy maintain momentum and not be eclipsed by the Trump-Putin narrative? And critically, will any ceasefire or agreement go deeper than a temporary truce? As General Clark framed it, the strategic posture of the US must align with credible pressure, not empty promises. Without effective military systems, more than we're providing right now, Mr. Putin is going to continue to wage this war, and it's going to be a very, very ugly winter for the people in Ukraine. His words underline the stakes. This is more than diplomacy or symbolism. It might determine whether Ukraine holds, whether Russia can reset its ambitions, and whether the balance of power in Europe is reshuffled.